How's it going, everybody? This is BeatTheBush. Today I'm going to talk about early retirement, in particular what the difference between LeanFIRE and FatFIRE is. Now, LeanFIRE and FatFIRE, these are the terms that you come across if you've been trying to retire early for long enough and you've researched it enough. Lean as in, a lean piece of meat, fat as in a fat piece of meat, and then FIRE, F-I-R-E, which stands for Financial Independence Retired Early. The basic premise of LeanFIRE is to cut your expenses drastically, kind of like austerity measures over in Europe. You save like a crazy person, you have a very low cost of living, and essentially your expenses are paid for by your passive and semi-passive income streams. This then allows you to retire early, and you can do optional things like living in a van that would really drastically lower your cost of living. You can move to a lower cost of living area in the same country, or you can move to Southeast Asia where the cost of living is a lot lower. Now, the contrast of this is FatFIRE, which is basically you're not very lean anymore. Your standard of living has inflated a little bit. And the requirement of this is basically you have to make a lot of money somehow in one way or another, being entrepreneurship, or maybe you have your own small business. However, it does still mean that you have to spend less than what you make, because if you spend exactly what you make, well, you're never going to save enough so that you can actually retire. When you're at the FatFIRE stage, you're essentially retired and you're at an elevated standard of living level. Of course, this is going to cost more. Now, this is nice and all. You don't have to cut corners because you can essentially live the life that you want to live. You don't have to keep on skimping on everything. Of course, everybody would like to be in the FatFIRE stage, but this requires you to make a lot of money so that you can fund whatever amount that you spend. Now, at this stage, someone external to your life, someone that knows nothing about you, you might be spending like everybody else's. You might be like getting coffees and stuff. You might be buying fancy new cars. People looking on the outside, looking in, might just think, oh yeah, they're just looking rich. But then you can actually be rich and look rich, because that is essentially the definition. If you're at the FatFIRE stage, you retired already, you have the money to spend in luxury items, in convenience items, and things like that. So if you're trying to go for LeanFIRE and then you see other people spending a lot of money, you cannot just generalize and then go, oh yeah, they're just trying to keep up everybody else. They have nothing in the bank account. But it's really hard to infer what their financial status is. You can kind of generalize, and it might be true for most of the cases, but for any particular person, you really don't know. You don't know their financial background, so it's hard to guess. Anyhow, if you're in the FatFIRE stage, you can actually not have to move to a lower cost of living area. You can stay in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. You can stay in New York. If you stay in the coastal areas, you might end up paying a lot more for healthcare, cost of living, property taxes, and state taxes. But the point here is that if you're in the FatFIRE stage, you can meet or exceed all these expenses. And it won't matter too much, because if you enjoy where you're living, because there are a lot of perks for living in California, living in New York. In a sense, if you live in the coastal areas, then you get what you pay for. Now, I want to talk about why people mostly choose LeanFIRE over FatFIRE. It's basically there really isn't a choice. If you want to go FatFIRE, you have to make millions of dollars. It's certainly not for the lack of trying, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people want to make a lot of money and they do actually try to do it, but not everyone can be a successful small business owner or an entrepreneur. Going LeanFIRE is essentially the path of least resistance, because saving $100 is kind of easier than making $100, depending on what type of person you are. For most people with a lot of frivolous spending, it's really easy for them to cut back on $100 worth of spending a month versus trying to make another $100 a month. For most people, I think this is easier to cut back. Now, what about van life and moving to Southeast Asia? Yes, this is a really, really shortcut path. This is kind of like a short-circuiting, this rat race type of thing. If you choose those paths, it's very unconventional. If you suddenly live in a van, people are going to treat you differently. You don't have an address anymore. If you live in Southeast Asia, you suddenly are transplanted. Your whole life is over there. If you sort of grew roots in a certain country, it's really hard to pick up and then just move to Southeast Asia. Sometimes people prefer these methods because the alternate is just kind of being a slave for life, basically, because people are just trapped in this cycle. They're working and then they're getting money and they have to live in, some rent place, and then they're just taking money in, and all of that money, most of it is going out in rent. So they only see themselves just, sort of spinning their wheels. So the way to short circuit all this is, okay, you still work and then you live in a van. It's basically almost like the only way out, in this day and age. Now, it's a sad truth that sometimes you have to do van life, or you have to move to Southeast Asia in order to retire early. You want to retire early because you want to have your life back. You want to spend more of your time. It's sort of like being greedy with your time. You don't want to give this away to your employer in exchange for money. You're sort of maximizing what you want to do with your time. Now, let me talk about why people want to go FatFIRE. It's sort of obvious. FatFIRE is great. It's luxury. Everybody wants FatFIRE. You want to retire early and you want to have enough money in the bank to be able to spend as you please and have a high standard of living. High standard of living means luxury. Means maybe you're living in the heart of San Francisco, in the heart of Manhattan. You keep on buying organic groceries, just a whole bunch of luxury things that is not really part of LeanFIRE, but this requires you to have a lot more capital or a lot more residual income. I hope this was interesting for you guys because laying it out like this, there's LeanFIRE, FatFIRE, and there's a spectrum in between. Now you want to go and choose what part of the spectrum do you want to retire at? What is your goal? Are you stuck in a situation where you see yourself just spinning your wheels for the next 30, 40 years? Well then, maybe living in a van is not all that bad in comparison to spinning your wheels for the next 30 years. If you guys are interested in supporting this channel, check out my Audible link down in the video description below where you can get a free audiobook just for trying this service out. The latest book I read is called The Millionaire Fastlane, and you can get this audiobook for free by using my trial down in the video description below. This book is about striving to be an entrepreneur, and I'd say after reading it, I get really pumped up. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to go start a company. So this book is more like, well, if you want to strike it rich, you want to pursue the FatFIRE route, then this book is for you. Now for this Audible service, if you don't like this audiobook or this service, you can cancel it before the subscription is up and you don't have to pay a thing. So if you just want to listen to this book just because I recommend it, even if you get this audiobook for free, you will still help benefit this channel. For those of you that already signed up already, thank you for supporting my channel. Don't forget to push that subscribe button and ring that bell icon. Thanks for watching.